Hello, everyone. Those were two fantastic talks that I think really give insight into the incredible intellectual work that happens here. What I'm going to be talking about today has to do more with the teaching and learning of Asian studies at the undergraduate and graduate level here. So I'm going to be talking about the case for Asian studies, which I believe many people in this room believe in, but I would like to make this case for the larger audience who may be watching this later. So I'll be talking about three different component parts to this. So the importance of Asia and the so-called Asian century, the ability to build student capacities to see with what I'm calling dragonfly eyes, and critical courses that provide mirrors and windows for students in an increasingly diverse campus and country. So I'd like to begin by sharing a few facts and figures that I imagine many of you in the audience today are familiar with, but are often a surprise to the students that I work with and to the broader American public. What we understand today as the continent of Asia is Earth's largest and most populous continent and is home to 2/3 of the world's population. It shares the continental landmass of Eurasia with the continent of Europe and the continental landmass of Afro-Eurasia with both Europe and Africa. The economic zone of Asia, one that goes from Russia in the north to Australia in the south, and from the Arabian Peninsula and Turkey in the west to Japan and New Zealand in the east, currently represents about half of global GDP and 2/3 of global economic growth. According to UN data, of the world's 30 largest cities today, 21 are in Asia. This number will only grow as we move forward into the future. The continent, which has long been home to the majority of the human population, was the site of many of the world's first civilizations. Its nearly 5 billion people constitute roughly 60% of the world's population today. The century we are living in is increasingly being called the Asian century. Far greater than just China, this new Asian system that's taking shape is a multi-civilizational order spanning Saudi Arabia to Japan, Russia to Australia, Turkey to Indonesia, linking 5 billion people through trade, finance, infrastructure, and diplomatic networks. Not to mention the connections from this region out to other regions across the globe. To me, it seems like everything happening in America today, whether it's electing a president, passing an infrastructure plan or a budget, or justifying the existence of NATO, whether it's pulling out of Afghanistan or supplying vaccines around the world, is being done with implications on geopolitical and economic relationships in Asia squarely in mind. There is no turning back from today's multipolar, multi-civilizational order. There is no more important region of the world for us to better understand than Asia. Like it or not, the idea of Asia looms large in American national consciousness over and over again, often becoming what you could call our great other, offering a critical challenge to long-held, almost axiomatic beliefs about ourselves and the increasingly fraught notion of American exceptionalism. The rise of China and India and Indonesia, as well as myriad other countries throughout Asia, calls into question American ideas about the assumed progression of history, about technology and innovation, about the operation of the free market. And for some, it's even sown doubts about the inherent superiority of our democratic political system. The challenging of these long-held ideologies necessitates that students understand what is happening in Asia and how and in what ways the world is changing and will continue to do so in the future. This knowledge is a form of what's called global literacy, and it enables students to move through the world, through their college experience, and into their post-graduation careers with knowledge and skills that enrich their ability to understand problems, to design solutions to these problems, and to understand the people that they are working with to solve them. From climate change to the global COVID-19 pandemic, these so-called wicked problems must be solved collectively. Without global literacy and informed empathy, we become perilously unself-reflective, locked into assumptions that go unquestioned, and are unable to design the kinds of solutions that these challenges necessitate. In 1973, design theorists Horst Rittel and Melvin Weber introduced the term wicked problem in order to draw attention to the complexities and challenges of addressing planning and social policy problems that do not have a black and white solution and are very much dependent on addressing different value systems and social contexts. Climate change, like problems in public health, is a wicked problem. It avoids straightforward articulation and is impossible to solve in a way that is simple or final. Our changing conversations around climate science and conservation, the unique regional factors that determine the local consequences of climate change, and our ability to present endless possible solutions require we approach climate change with holistic and collaborative reasoning in search of long-term, future-focused solutions. Any attempt at solving these wicked problems has as a fundamental starting point a need for the understanding of Asia. Asia is profoundly complex, and we all need to be better informed. Asian studies helps students develop what I called earlier dragonfly eyes, meaning that they can see things from multiple simultaneous angles at the same time and integrate all of these perspectives and process them without succumbing to a paralysis of confusion. Asia as a region and as a specific place and people and the specific places and people and cultures within it is a place that students must learn to see through different lenses in combination. National security and geopolitics, human rights, the rights of marginalized communities, solutions to climate change, and responses to xenophobia and authoritarianism are all issues that we must learn to understand through multiple perspectives. This is so much of why students attend college in the first place, to gain these critical thinking skills that facilitate problem solving. Getting informed on what's happening in Asia is, at once, much easier and much more difficult than it was just a decade ago. On the one hand, there are substantially more sources of English language content about Asia than ever before. Major media outlets now devote more and more space to the topic of Asia. There is a mad proliferation of podcasts, YouTube videos, and other digital content increasingly being produced in Asia as well. On the other hand, there are far fewer reporters from American media outlets who are on the ground in Asia, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. Making sense of all of this information and understanding what counts as an official position and what's just a fringe opinion is difficult to master. Assessing the reliability or the representativeness of what information we consume is not easy, especially without the guidance of trained and seasoned specialists like we just heard from. This is the second benefit of Asian studies across the curriculum: the connection of students to experts who can help guide them in the skills of sifting through multiple competing sources of information and learning to form their own opinions and analyses based on multiple perspective points of data is the value of Asian studies. And finally, I offer a third imperative for the continued teaching and expansion of Asian studies courses across the curriculum. Learning about, interrogating, and coming to know current issues, history, culture, and ways of life across Asia offers students both a window to learn history, authentic perspectives, and perhaps shared experiences that differ and converge with their own lives. At the same time, enrollment in Asian studies courses also offers students with family histories and personal connection to Asia and its diasporas, mirrors into which they can see themselves and their own stories. Asian studies courses enrich student learning, and they also affirm diverse student identities and stories. Sure, we are all human, but we are taught very different things in school and at home. We were socialized differently. We relate to our history differently. We were brought up on entirely separate vocabularies of historical and mythological archetypes. We have quite separate pantheons of heroes and of villains, quite distinct collections of fables and fairy tales that we were all raised on. With vastly different experiences of the world, it shouldn't surprise us that we have quite a bit of psychological distance from one another. But with enough knowledge, we can learn to bridge these gaps. We human beings come equipped with the ability to do this, to put ourselves in that headspace. And if we've taken the time to understand the very different influences, the assumptions, the values, the habits of mind to populate it, not with precisely the same mental furnishings that people from another country or culture have, but at least something that's a decent representation, that's going to take us a whole lot closer to understanding how others think. So in closing, Asian studies is one of many critical components of contemporary higher education that must rise to the challenge of global wicked problems and the dawn of the Asian century. This requires a dialing down of American hubris. It requires us to try much harder to come to a multidimensional understanding, one that can recognize, accept, and process all the vexing contradictions and the complexities of Asia. Your support for our speaker series helps us do this. Thank you.